Hello, everybody. Before we continue with late adulthood, I want to take a moment and have you think of all that you've been able to accomplish and all the changes in your life since we've come back from school. You've probably picked up quite a few skills, whether it's Zoom in a class or whatever technologies. Think about maybe putting a section on your Vita referring to technologies that you're familiar with and that could perhaps be an asset in a job situation. Just a thought. Well, let's continue. So we're in late adulthood now. Take a moment and, if you will, think of the ages. Hopefully you said 60 and 65 plus. We're off and running. If you see the phrase personality traits and think, well, she's going to have to mention the big five, you are right. I try to be predictable. So take a moment and think of the ocean mnemonic and see if you can identify the big five. The O, openness, but to experiences or ideas. Hopefully you said to experiences. C, consciousness or conscientiousness. Hopefully you went with conscientiousness. E, well, that's extroversion-introversion. A, agreeableness or aggression. Hopefully you went with agreeableness. And N, oh, that might be a tougher one, neuroticism or narcissism. Neuroticism, again, referring to degree of emotional stability. Narcissism, being self-centered and totally unfocused with other people's needs. It's all me, me, me. Hopefully you went with neuroticism. But in terms of least stable, it would not be the big five. As you probably know, it is masculinity and femininity. Let's return our focus to Erikson, but let's start with a quick review for each of the first positive outcomes for the stages we've covered so far. See if you, without peeking, can associate with a negative possible outcome. So trust versus mistrust, obviously an easy one. Next, autonomy, the terrible twos, versus shame and doubt. Next, early childhood, initiative versus guilt. Elementary school years, industry versus inferiority. I remember one time we had an activity which we had to cut out a house and put it up, and the teacher would put it on the streets. And I was very timid about which way to cut the material, so I gave it to somebody else and they miscut it. So my house was half the size of everybody else's for the full semester. So definitely the shame and doubt end of it. Identity versus role confusion. Intimacy versus isolation. And generativity, that's a new one. Hopefully you went with stagnation because we have not mentioned that so far. So I hope you did well. That was a call for Bailey, the foster dog. His prospective owners have been approved, so now to schedule a meeting. I'll keep you informed. So integrity, a life well lived. Despair, significant regrets, and realization that what choices have been made cannot be undone. A possible outcome is despondence, bitterness. But although Erikson didn't consider this, I would suggest neither. Perhaps they're in denial. 20% of adults in late adulthood die at intestate, which means without a will. So even though they're in their 70s, 80s, 90s, or above, not willing to make a will because not wanting to face that. I know many of my partners' friends in their 80s and higher health problems are still planning on living to 100. Again, maybe denial is a powerful human defense mechanism. So take a moment and think of as many possible losses that are common in late adulthood that you can think of. Maybe think of people that are older in your life, or just what you can think of that might be lost. And then click next icon to see how well you did. As we noted, this stage of life is associated with a great number of losses. This is a partial list. How many of these did you come up with? And did you come up with any good ones on your own? I strongly suspect that you did. In no particular order, I started with health. So there might be a constant reminder of pain in one's arthritic joints, diabetes management, heart management, and so on. So a great many changes related to health. Friends, one by one, one's friends will drop away and be lost. Siblings, sometimes one is the last remaining sibling. Partner loss. Related to health again, mobility. I was thinking about the ability to walk without a cane, walk without a walker, walk at all. Maybe be able to put on your own shoes, I don't know, cut your own toenails. Driving, some have to give it up, some voluntarily give it up, but the loss of driving has a great many implications in terms of getting together with their friends, enjoying life, hobbies. So driving is a very significant loss. Loss of one job. The job is often an identity. Being retired such and such is not the same as being an active such and such. Pets. It might be that one has to move to a complex that pets, such as dogs, are not allowed. Or it might be, in the case of my aunt, afraid to get another dog for fear that she'll die and leave this pet behind. I will mention that there is very new news as of, anyway, 4/23, that felines can get coronavirus. There is a stricken tiger in the Bronx Zoo. So if you have cats and you let them go out the house, if they carouse with another cat and that cat's owner has COVID, you risk your cat getting it and possibly you. So until evidence suggests otherwise, I suggest you not let your cats out unless you live in the country far from any neighbors. But back to our main topic, hobbies. Maybe the hobby requires mobility. Maybe the hobby requires great visual ability, such as maybe sewing. I know somebody that can't sew with black because they can't work with black on black. So loss of hobbies is often very significant. Overall, these can lead to a great loss of independence. Also, one's authority as a parent. The person might be sliding more in terms of the roles of one being taken care of rather than the caretaker. And relate to an independence, an overall sense of lack of control in one's life. So again, late adulthood, integrity versus despair, can be a time of great losses. Let's consider something called the positivity effect. When people look over their life, they are much more likely to recall good experiences over bad. Maybe as an analogy, childbirth might be a very strenuous and painful process, often leaving the woman in the midst of it, swearing she'll never do that again. And yet afterwards, the pain is often forgotten as you view your newborn child. So a similar effect, but refers to, obviously not the birthing process, but one's entire life. A major theme of late adulthood is control versus dependency. Control, being able to make your decisions for yourself, to be able to do the various activities of daily living without support, versus dependency, having to give over decision making, having to depend on people for meals or help in ambulation or medication or paying the bills, etc. So a major issue that most people will face if they live long enough. Many younger people often assume that the elderly, our parents, want to move in with us, but rarely is the case. A senior has their own house or residence, they have their community, the places they like to go, the friends that live nearby. So very few seniors, very few people in late adulthood wish to live with their adult children, and probably that suits the adult children fine too. Let's consider elder maltreatment. They risk the same types of abuse and neglect as children. Physical abuse, physical neglect, emotional abuse, and sexual abuse. Yes, indeed, sexual abuse. But they risk additional type of abuse also, financial abuse. Outright financial abuse affects about 1 in 20 elders. It's most likely to be a trust friend, family member in particular, or caregiver, but more likely trusted family member or caregiver. But more commonly, 1 in 5 are the victims of fraud. It might be the person they call and they say, Grandma, Grandma, I need your money, that sort of thing. And believe it or not, that works quite frequently. It could be their bank calling them and wanting to know their account number so they could check for fraud. Obviously, banks never do that. A credit card company calling them because there's been fraud, and please provide your credit card number. I had that one time, and it's like, you called me, you give me the card number, I'm not talking to you. And you call back the company directly, obviously. So if you have a senior in your life, you might, whenever you hear of a scam, share the scam with them, and also share these common scams. Believe it or not, I had a colleague who was told that he was greatly in arrears with the IRS and needed to pay money immediately, otherwise he would be financially penalized and jailed, and he went so far, believe it or not, to take money out of the bank before he realized that this person was a scammer. So it can happen, surprisingly, at any education or age level. In terms of other forms of abuse that we mentioned, nursing homes are a major concern. I had to share a story with you all. I've already posted these PowerPoints to Blackboard, but my father dropped by to get some cookies. I haven't baked scratch cookies in years, but anyway, my father dropped by to get some scratch cookies, and he shared a story about scamming of elders. And I thought, I've got to share this with my students. Literally, it wasn't 15 minutes beyond when I posted. He said he got this phone call, and the kid says, "Hi, Grandpa, I've just been in an accident." Oh, by the way, my father has no grandchildren. Grandpa, I've been in an accident, and I'm okay, but I broke my nose, and the woman, she ran a red light, and they not sure she's going to keep the baby, and they're charging me with manslaughter, and I need some money to post bond. And my father asked, "Do you know who I am?" And the kid, the teen, I guess, or whatever, young adult said, "Yeah, Neil." And it's like, "And what's your name?" And at that point, the person hung up. But what timing! So do talk to your elderly relatives or elderly friends about these scams, because they absolutely do happen. And I thought Dad's timing was perfect on this. So I just thought I would share that all with you. Let's consider volunteerism in late adulthood. We know that in young adulthood, the rate of volunteerism is both the lowest at the beginning and the highest at the end. But again, that is young adulthood. Volunteerism in late adulthood is very common and is very beneficial for both the person doing the volunteering as well as the recipients. So if you could take a moment and think, as you should later parts of your life, how do you think you might volunteer? Would it be with pets? Would it be with children? Would it be with elderly? Would it be in hospitals? We can often align our volunteerism with our own hobbies and lifestyle interests. So I hope you take a moment and consider what you might be volunteering in the future, though it's quite possible for many of you it's what you're volunteering in right now. When individuals in late adulthood can no longer fully care for themselves, who cares for them? Well, many times it is the family. Other time, it could be family and or in-home helper systems. Depending on the person's income level, home helper systems can be paid to up to 100% in New York State. So do investigate that if you have an elderly person in your family that's unable to make full care. This can be anything from to help with bathing, dressing, often includes even things like, depending on the system, very, very light household work. Assisted living facilities, and lastly, nursing facilities. These are associated with the people that have the greatest physical or cognitive issues. Let's consider housing arrangements in late adulthood. Many people, especially in the early part of late adulthood, that is the young old, live in ordinary homes, often their own. It could be with a partner or could be alone. Though sometimes seniors will take on for the first time housemates, or maybe they've done this throughout their lives. Housemates can offer shared household responsibilities, companionship, and of course, fiscally very advantageous. Another possibility is they live in an ordinary home, but it's the home of a family member. Sometimes in late adulthood, seniors sell their home or move from their private apartment to residential communities that are senior-based. Private dwellings in senior developments can be homes or townhouses, or it can be in assisted living communities. The advantage is a larger peer group. Often there's activities built in. There might be shared exercise rooms, perhaps shared pools. Often there is transportation in the form of vans to places that seniors might want to go, from anywhere from a supermarket to a drugstore to the mall. So do offer many advantages. Nursing homes, as mentioned, are often associated with individuals with very significant physical and/or mental incapacitations. I want to mention long-term care insurance. I know at the age of most of my students, I would not have known what this is. This is a fairly expensive insurance, but it keeps you in your house when you become debilitated. So if your medical issues can be managed at home with, say, a visiting nurse or healthcare person, even daily, the insurance will pay for it. So many people who have had to have gone to a nursing home are kept at home much, much longer, or maybe for the rest of their lives. I just recently purchased it. It's expensive, but I think it's worth it not to end up in a nursing home. Let's consider the late adulthood housing arrangement of the nursing home, much more common in the developed than in the developing world. But specifically for the US, what percentage of the oldest old, in other words, the 85 and older, do you believe live in a nursing home? Take a moment and think of your best guess. I'll give you a second. Did you guess 10%, 20%, 33%, 40%, over half? Well, you might be surprised. It's slightly less than 10%. Let's consider some good news. Seniors, on average, are far better off than previous decades. The 75-plus age group had the highest median, in other words, the highest average household income. So that's very good news. Let's now consider some basic retirement facts, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Almost 10% of persons age 65 or older work, part-time or full-time. For many, it's voluntary, and for many, it is not. 3/4 of retirees say that they're financially comfortable. That would be our good news, assuming you're not in the 25%. 20%, as we learned before, expect to never be able to afford to retire. And if you look at singles, for half of singles, Social Security is almost the entirety of their income, close to 90%, but pushing the entirety. So start saving, even if it's $10 a paycheck when you're a young adult, and you'll probably be just fine. Don't wait till late in life, or you will quite possibly not be. I decided to add a new bullet point onto the slide, the very basic fact of how much time the average American will spend in retirement. So consider these choices. Which do you lean towards? 6 to 9 years, 10 to 14, 15 to 18, or approximately 20 or more? Well, if you lean towards approximately 20 or more, in other words, 2 decades, that would be the answer. So it's a very substantial portion of your life, longer than some of you have lived, I imagine. Now back to the bad news. Women in retirement. A woman who reaches 85 is likely to live to age 92, but she's got to reach 85 first. For men, the gap is very diminished down to negligible difference. If he lives to 85, on average, he will reach 91. Now, women go into retirement with roughly half the savings of men. In no small part, they make, on average, currently 81 cents per every dollar a male colleague makes. In part due to stepping out of the job market, in part outright discrimination. That translates into 27,000 less a year on average. So far less money is left over to go into their 401ks. Women are much more likely to be in poverty in late adulthood. At age 75, 3 times more likely to be poor. I thought I'd share that in my circle of female friends, which isn't a huge circle. One has told me that she will never be able to retire, and another friend is 70 and she is currently working because she has to. The sibling relationship is typically the longest life relationship. And the nature of our sibling relationships varies dramatically from person to person, and even obviously from sibling to sibling. Relationships can get better, worse, or totally break down. But siblings can be an important insurance policy. When one's lost one's partner, one's friends, they might be the lifeline one needs to prevent, in some cases, even homelessness. In other cases, a source of companionship, even if it's via phone or Skyping. Let's consider our last slide of this particular module on widows and widowers. Women are widows and men are widowers. If you're having trouble distinguishing the two, just think of the black widow spider. She's a female, right, and sometimes cannibalizes her tiny mate? Indeed. So the widow is the female. 7 out of 10 women will become widows. Yet, strangely enough, many do not plan well. They relinquish their driving to their partner for years or even decades, the financial arrangements of the household. So, unfortunately, many women do not plan for what is often going to happen. Now, after the death of the partner, men are 5 times more likely to remarry. And in part because men, the widowers, have a much harder time in the state and process of life. Why? Well, if you're thinking in terms of heterosexual relationship, often the woman is the one who monitors the health, goads him into seeing doctors, makes sure he takes his prescription, makes sure he goes to physical therapy or so on. So without that lack of that partner that's very invested in his health, he often sees decline in health. Often in relationships, the woman is the one that keeps the couple in touch with other couples, single friends, family. So without her role, sometimes he becomes socially isolated. The next one, sorry guys, I don't have a lot of sympathy for, but I don't think this would be a factor in the households of my men in this particular class. Men of at least current late adulthood are distressed over household work. They seem to think it's beneath them, so they're distressed over whether it's washing the dishes or doing the laundry. So this is just the way this particular age group looks at housework. And also, research suggests strongly that men get more out of marriage than women get out of marriage. So since they benefit from marriage more, they have much more to lose when they are not in this relationship. And we have now finished our chapter, or pardon, our module.